All right. I think we're going to go ahead and get started. And I will just start by saying hello to everyone. And I'll also say thank you for choosing to spend your time with us for our webinar today, which is on building your first report with Jaspersoft and how you can use reporting as a means for distributing information effectively to your fellow humans. As the title indicates, we're going to focus on the basics and the need to know info for building a report. We're not going to be getting into a lot of the more complex report related scenarios. But Jaspersoft has been a leader in reporting for many years, and there's a ton of functionality, again, that we simply won't cover today in the interest of not overwhelming you. We will show you what's possible with Jaspersoft and point you to some resources to help you take your reporting to the next level. But the real goal of today's session is that you be able to walk away at the end and have the knowledge you need to go off and build your own reports with Jaspersoft. Now, just as always, a few housekeeping items before we get started. There's always the common question of whether or not this webinar will be recorded, and the answer is yes. You're going to receive an email within the next 3 days with a link to both the recording and the slides that will be taking you through. And the second thing that I'll point out is if you have any questions throughout the course of today's session, please plug those into the Q&A box in the Zoom portal, and please, if you can, try to avoid the chat window. The Q&A box will make them a lot more visible to us, and if we're not able to get to questions in line with today's presentation, the Q&A box saves automatically and will allow my co-presenter and I to get back to you with any responses following today's webinar. And we're going to aim to save about 5 to 10 minutes at the end to answer as many questions as we can. So with that, let's go ahead. And just quickly before we begin, I want to quickly mention that our annual user conference called TIBCO Now is coming up in September. This year it is in Las Vegas, and there's a lot of great content, hands-on workshops, and best practices that will be shared on Jaspersoft, as well as many other TIBCO products. If you're interested in registering, you can follow the link at the bottom of the screen to see the agenda and learn more about the event. And now just a quick introduction to who you're going to be hearing from today. Currently speaking is Shane Switterick, myself, product marketing manager at TIBCO. I'm specific to the Jaspersoft product group, and I'm based out of our San Francisco office. And I'm joined by Gene Arnold, a senior solutions consultant at TIBCO, also dedicated to Jaspersoft. Gene is, in my opinion, probably our best demoer. So you guys are in for a treat for the demo he's going to have prepared for you today. Gene's based out of the New York City area in New York State. And to frame today's presentation, here's a look at where it fits into what we're doing over the course of the year. Now, this webinar is part of our summer theme of modern reporting, which is one of the 4 themes or categories of content that we're covering throughout 2018. And each of these 4 themes tie into the umbrella theme at the top called Data as a Feature. And in case you haven't attended other Jaspersoft webinars this year, Data as a Feature is a concept that we co-developed with O'Reilly Media earlier this year. And it explains how data can be treated as a core feature of your software applications to deliver value to your users and help them reach goals. And I'll show you, if you're interested, how to learn more about this concept at the end of our webinar. In the meantime, we're going to be diving into this theme of modern reporting today and show you how to get started, again, with building your own reports with Jaspersoft. Here's our agenda for today. We're going to start by quickly defining what is a report and give you a few common characteristics of reports so that we all have a common understanding of what we're building before we jump into this. Next, we'll show you the tools you'll need to build your report, how to access them, and introduce you to the report design environment that we'll be using. And after that, we will start the demo. And hopefully the demo is going to take up the majority of today's session. And we're going to cover each of the sub-bullets listed on the screen, starting with connecting to your data and finishing with publishing and sharing your finished report. All right, so what is a report? The way that we define it is as a report is a combination of one or more data visualizations, text, images, and other elements that are collectively used to communicate what's happened to users. And this is unique to some of the other forms of analytics out there, which are designed to diagnose why things happened and recommend some future action. Reports are really about giving an account of the truth, or what we know for certain has taken place. And on the far right are a few examples of reports created with Jaspersoft. There's still this common misconception among a lot of individuals that all reports look like the document on the far right. Printed reports are very much still in use, but modern reports can be made much more attractive and can contain a lot of functionality that's not included in printed reports, and some of which we're going to dig into and share with you today. And if you're sitting there wondering to yourself, that description sounds a lot like a dashboard, you're certainly not alone. As reports have gained a lot of this new functionality I just mentioned and began being consumed increasingly on the web, there's been a considerable amount of overlap in the roles and characteristics of reports and dashboards. And finally, without getting too philosophical, here's a basic comparison of characteristics for reports versus dashboards. So number one, reports and dashboards both support the ability for users to interact with data. And examples of interactivity are things like filtering and sorting of your data. And actually, in fact, the second characteristic, drilling, is also a form of interactivity and is commonly supported by both. And this drilling allows users to drill down into hierarchical data to see details of some aggregated view, or drill across to see views related to the one the user is currently looking at. Where reports and dashboards begin to deviate is in how they're displayed. So reports support the use of multiple pages. That's unique to reports, whereas dashboards are single page views or interactive screens. One step down, reports are used for informational work and for looking at things like progress over time, whereas dashboards are for visualizing KPIs or key performance indicators, and are used for giving users an at-a-glance understanding of high-level metrics. And then the last characteristic is perhaps the most important distinction. The function of a report is often to tell a story. Reports, as I mentioned at the beginning of the slide, are a record of what happened. If you need to govern what information your users are consuming, that is one of the primary functions of reports. And dashboards, on the other hand, are intended to be more exploratory and give your users the ability to navigate around data to form their own stories. All right, so the next thing that we're going to jump into is what you're actually going to need to build your own report with Jaspersoft. And technically, the only thing you'll need to build your first report with Jaspersoft is our report designer called Jaspersoft Studio. And Jaspersoft Studio is an extremely powerful tool, and it's often referred to as a pixel perfect designer because it gives you the control over the design of your report down to the pixel level. And just to give you some perspective, I mentioned, anybody can say that they have the, world's most popular report designer or reporting engine. Last week alone, Jaspersoft Studio was downloaded over 33,000 times. It's been around for several years and has grown in features and functionality over those years. So it's very capable and very highly used reporting tool. And then just a little bit of context, Jasperreports library is a Java library that's used to generate reports that are created in Jaspersoft Studio once your design is complete. It's available both standalone as well as it's also embedded conveniently inside of Jaspersoft Studio, and that's the engine that's going to be actually populating the report templates that you're going to be building in Jaspersoft Studio. And then if you want a way to distribute your reports to your team or colleagues, and also provide a centralized repository for all of your reports, you can download Jasper Report Server. Each of these products comes in a free and paid version, and at the end, I'll take a moment to show you the differences between each of these products in both the community and commercial form. All right, and before I hand you over to Gene, I want to quickly introduce you to the report design environment that you're going to be using to build your first report. And to start, we're going to go through each of these sections briefly. The area in the top right is what we call the palette. And this area contains all the elements you can use when designing reports, including things, obvious things like tables, you get charts, text fields, images, and a lot more, some of which we're going to be covering today. And again, some in the interest of not overwhelming you, we'll mention, but probably won't actually be demoing. The next thing is the properties area. When you select an element in your report, you again have the ability to customize its look and feel using the design options in this section, and there's some really robust things that you can do within the properties area. In the bottom left is the outline pane. This is an XML-based hierarchy for the report that you're currently working on. This is really helpful for keeping track of all of the variables, styles, parameters, and other customizations you've made to your report. On the top left is the Repository Explorer and Project Explorer. This is where all of your reports, connected data sources, which we'll show today, and other project elements can be found. In the middle, this one should be fairly obvious. This is the main design area where you will be assembling your report and managing the overall layout. And then last but not least, on the bottom, it's really an extension of the design area where you can track important information about your reports, like the time it takes to compile or how many pages it is. And it also plays a really important role in the ability to preview what your report will look like at any point in the design process, and that is something that we'll show you in today's demo. And that's it for the quick intro tour for Jaspersoft Studio. Hopefully that was helpful in getting you familiar with the environments. And I think a lot of this is really going to come to life again through the demo that Gene's going to show you just here shortly. And again, I showed you the sub bullets for what we're going to be covering as part of that demo. But really quickly before I hand it over to Gene, I'm going to ask you to complete just 2 quick polling questions. The first should be launching now. And the first question is just to get a sense of the experience of the audience. What is your experience level with building reports using a report design tool? And this information will really help Gene as he's going through the demo to cater based on the overall experience of the people that are tuned into today's webinar. So I'll give everyone about 20 or 30 seconds longer to get this input, and it looks like we already have a good amount of responses coming in. All right, so give about another 10 seconds so you can get your final responses plugged in. And looking at the preliminary results, the most common at 30% was some experience with building reports using a report design tool, but not with Jaspersoft. Number 2 seems to be little or no experience with any tool. You're purely here to learn, which is fantastic. Some experience with Jaspersoft was third at 21%, very experienced, but not with Jaspersoft, 15%. So that's good as well. And then we've got a couple of Jaspersoft experts on the line that are just here for a refresher. So a good spread, but it looks like the majority of you have at least some experience with a report design tool. But we're certainly going to cover the basics here, which I think should accommodate just about everybody who's dialed in. All right, so I have one more polling question. I promise this is the last one. And let me launch this one. All right, so that should have just popped up. And the second question is, we're curious why you're building a report. I mentioned a few different scenarios in the abstract. Is this a personal or a school project? Are you building reports for internal needs at your company, or are you building reports perhaps to serve your company's customers? And there's also an option for other as well. So again, I'll give everybody about 15 or 20 more seconds. We'll take a look at the results and then move on. All right. Well, thank you everybody for your participation. It's a good percentage. We have a dead tie at 65% respondents, both for internal reporting needs and external reporting needs. So we got a split right down the middle, and then at 9% we have other. So appreciate that context and that information. And at this point, I'm going to hand you over to the main attraction for today, Gene, who's going to take you through the actual demo and workshop of building a initial report in Jaspersoft Studio. So Gene, I'll go ahead and hand the ball over to you.
Okay, and I'm going to unmute my line and share my screen. And then, of course, Shane, just confirm that you can hear me and you can see my screen, please.
Yes, both of those.
Okay, great. Well, let's go have some fun. As Shane mentioned, I do really enjoy to demo Jaspersoft, but it's simply because I really enjoy the product. It's a great product. It's a lot of fun to work with. And today we'll spend some time inside of Jaspersoft Studio. So here is what we're going to build. In the spirit of Shark Week, apparently Shane told me ahead of time that we're in Shark Week right now. I'm not a big Shark Week guy, but he's a big Shark Week guy. And he said, Gene, it'd be kind of fun to do something around Shark Week. So we're doing Shark Week. So if we take a look at our example, we are going to be creating a report that maybe not the most happy report. We're going to be talking about shark attacks, right? And the year, the country, if it was a guy or a gal, and if it was pretty severe or not. But it's going to be a real simple report, and it's going to show you some pretty cool features that I think you'll use in just about every report. As Shane mentioned before, Jaspersoft Studio offers you an amazing amount of power. I mean, you can do some crazy cool things with this tool, but that's not the norm, okay? Norm is going to be maybe a report more detailed than this, but the concepts that we're going to be covering today are really the ones that you're going to be using in just about all of your reports. And then you've got the amazing power of the product where you want to start doing different sub-reports and advanced charting and drilling, or you're building these reports not to just be a invoice, but you're building these reports to use on your web page. Again, not as a report, but as a UI, as an interface, because you can click on different areas of your report and call JavaScript functions. I mean, you can do all those things with the Jaspersoft reports that you build in Studio, but that's too much to handle today. Let's just go and build a nice report, and it's going to look something like this. If we click on Preview, our report is going to ask us if we'd like to look at males or females or both. We're going to click on Run, and of course, we'll be given a result. And if it was unfortunately fatal, we will indicate that with the red background. And then this report will give you the option to maybe just take a look at males, okay? Or, as you would expect, females. All right, so this report's going to show you how to connect the data. It's going to show you how to put your items on the screen. It's going to show you how to alter them, make them look kind of cool, introduce some styling, and also introduce parameters inside of your SQL statements to make these more flexible, okay? And these really are some of the building blocks you need to know to use the Jaspersoft Studio tool. So I'm going to go back to design, and let's basically go build something that looks very similar to what you're looking at right now. The first thing we do is we go and we build I like to anyway, build more of a project. Okay, so we're going to use this one, the webinar demo. But what you would do is you would go over here to the top and click on your file, new, and then we'd click project. And then you choose the Jasper Reports project and then finish out the prompts. The reason for that is because your project may have specific data adapters that you want to have inside of it. In this example, we're going to have some images or one image. You also may have specific jar files. I don't want to go too deep into that at all because I don't want to confuse anyone, but these reports can be extremely powerful, and you may want to package that all up in one project just to make it convenient. Projects can also have folders so you can organize things. In fact, if we have any Java developers on the line right now, this interface may look very familiar to you because it's Eclipse. We use Eclipse as our interface, if you will, to run Jaspersoft Studio. Okay, so that affords us some flexibility here and a lot of power. You can use Studio on a number of different operating systems. Okay, because Jaspersoft needs to be very flexible. I'm running this on my Mac, but the same interface could be run on a Windows operating system and, of course, a Linux operating system. So here is my project. And then within our project, the first thing we need to do is get to data, right? You really can't do a report without any data. So let's go and do that. And you would simply just go over to your project, right-click, and do New Data Adapter. And you give your data adapter a name. I already have one called Data Adapter. That's why my next isn't highlighted there. We're just going to call this number 2 so I can get through the prompts. And then you can pick through a wide variety of different data adapters that come with the product, okay? Some of these will be available to you with the professional edition of the product, okay? And quite a few of them will be available to you in the community edition. I just want to make sure I say that to you now, because if you do download this and maybe pause our screen and try to compare the two, you might be wondering, well, why isn't this here? Why don't I see this Spotfire information link or things like that? That's why they may differ. But we give you a wide variety of out-of-the-box data adapters to pick from. The one I'm using is a very simple JDBC driver to the local Postgres database server on my laptop. And we're going to be pulling back data from the shark_data database. Okay, so that's where we start things out. Always good to maybe do a quick test of your connection, right? Just to make sure everything's working after you have it set up. So great. We've got a data adapter, the building block to a very, very important building block to the report. A couple things that come up. Can you have more than one data adapter in a report? Yes. Okay. Sometimes you have some very complex reports where you have to do things like that. It's generally common to have one data adapter in there, but you can add more. Again, these reports can be very, very powerful, but also very, very flexible. The big takeaway here is that when you're using these reports, you can actually build a report to be so flexible that it will allow you to not have to build so many other reports. You can use one report to cover many tasks. Now, we need to go and build a report, okay? So let's kind of get moving over here. And just like we did with the data adapter, we're going to right-click again. Okay, we'll do New. And this time we're going to choose a Jaspersoft report. Okay? Out of the box, we have a number of different templates you can choose from. They're great to get you started. Also great to use for training purposes. But for this example, we're going to stick with the blank letter template because I want to start everything from scratch and show you the entire process. Okay, we'll click on next. And we do need to give this a new name. So we're going to call this shark underscore attack. Okay, and we'll flow through the prompts over here next. The prompt is now asking us, and everything I'm showing you right now, you could always do later, but we're going to go through the UI to show you how this works. The prompt is asking us, what data adapter would you like to use in this particular report? I'm going to go and pick my local data adapter, this one right here, okay? And it's going to pop up the data that this particular data adapter will offer me. And I am going to use the diagram option to make it a little easier for me to create my query. I'll move through my data. I'll go into my tables. This is my Shark Attack database. It only has one table in it, and that table is called data, and I'll bring it over. And I'm going to want the year, the country, the sex, the gender of the individual, and if it was fatal or not. Sometimes I'm asked from people, what are some of the skill sets a report designer needs to know to use Studio? Well, they need to be a technical person, because as you can see, what we're doing right now is a little bit more on the technical side, but you also have to have a good understanding of your data, okay? Whether it's a relational database, whether you're bringing in a web service, whether you're using a JSON file, XML document, it's not, do you have to be a technical Studio person? You need to have some kind of understanding of your data and how to speak to that data. And if we click on text, you'll see that that diagram built our query for us. Cool, let's keep on going. Click on next. And this now is showing me all the fields that I have available to me in this example. And I'm going to bring them all over. And then we're going to click on next. And then on this screen, you have the option of choosing a specific field to group by. Sometimes you want to group your data. I'm going to pick country, but not for grouping. Actually, sorry about that. We don't want all of them. We just want country. Not for grouping. You can also use the field as a sort field. And we're going to talk about this in a minute after I actually move forward. So I don't want to as much group on country, but I want to sort, okay, on country. So we're going to use that as our sorting field. And then we'll click on next, and it's going to say congratulations because it's a happy tool, right? And we click on finish. So that's now attached the data to the report. Let's take a look at this. Just like I clicked on test with the data source, you want to go and pick mini goals along the way. You can't create a report without data. Data won't work without a working data source. And if you click on this little, actually, let me do this again so you can see what I clicked on. I'm sorry about that. There's a small little icon over here that opens up the data set and query editor dialog box. On here, this is where you can really test things and also alter the query. So let's make sure everything is working. So I'm going to go to data preview, okay? And I'm going to make sure that I get some data, okay? If you're not getting data here, I can pretty much guarantee you're not going to get data in your report. Again, mini goals, work your way through the process. So we have data here, okay? And this is cool. But there's something to talk about. Notice it's not really sorted, okay, by country, right? This is not in any correct order. Though if we click on sorting, you see that country is there. This is a very important thing that we should talk about just for a moment. When you have the sorting, when you're using it here, okay, when you're working inside of this tab, what happens is the report pulls all the data into the report, into this report object. And then once it's there, it says, okay, now that I have the data, apparently I need to sort it. I'm going to sort it now. Okay? Now, for all of my query people that are listening to this, they're sitting here thinking, why would you do that? Right? You are now saying that the report has to reformat the data. This is okay. I don't have a lot of data coming back here, but let's say you did. That's going to hurt the performance of your report. We do a lot of business with a lot of big organizations with big reports. Tuning your report is extremely important. So putting the sorting here might not be the most efficient way to sort your data. So let's go and delete that. And let's do something that I think my SQL query people are expecting to see. Order by. And let's move our sorting now into the query. So now I'm not sorting the data in the report. I'm sorting it where it should be done. I'm sorting it via a query in the database. So now when we go here and do a data preview, now things are going to be sorted by country, order by, and I can go and bring it into it. But we still have things that are looking a little bit off because some of the data in here is not perfectly clean. If I bring back more data, you're going to see that some of them have these blanks. That's what's kind of throwing things off a little bit over here. So sometimes having to have an understanding of your data and how to work with your data is very important, because this isn't going to work for me. Okay, I can't use blanks for my drop down. And if you take a look and I scroll down a little bit more over here, unknown isn't going to work for me either. Okay, because if you think of parameters, if I want to add filters, well, this is supposed to be obviously an F or an M. And if I use the filter on fatality, this should be a Y or an N. Okay, there could be all kinds of stuff in my data. So let's go and make this a little bit better. I have a query right here to do that. If we take a look at this query now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, again, bring back my fields, but I'm putting in two where clauses. I'm basically saying, well, look, only bring back data where fatality is in yes and no, Y and N, or the data.sex field is M and F. Now, please understand, I'm sure there are a gazillion different ways you could have written this query, and some would be maybe more efficient than this. The point was not to prove that this is the most efficient query, because I am by no means a DBA. The point is to show you that you have the flexibility of writing your own queries and maybe cleaning some things up. Because if we do the refresh now, if you notice, if you take a look, there are no more blanks. There's a lot of fields. We'd be dragging and dropping all day long over here, but there's no more blanks. There's no more unknowns. Everything is looking pretty cool. Okay, so this is not a, do I have to know how to do something special in Jaspersoft Studio skill. This is a SQL skill, one that you'll need to know regardless if you're going to build reports, okay? Now, we do have a tool that's very much drag and drop, ad hoc, very easy to build reports, and that's in our Jaspersoft Studio application. I mean, Jaspersoft Server. Jaspersoft Server has our ad hoc functionality out of the scope of this demonstration. But if you are looking for a product to make it very easy for end users to just drag and drop fields onto the screen, no queries are required whatsoever, you certainly should talk to us about that, and we'll tell you all about Jaspersoft Server, and we'll talk to you about ad hoc. But for this demo, we're going to stick to what we're looking at right now. So we've got our data, right? This is working. Yeehaw, everything's going pretty good. Let's now build out our report. So let's take a look at this screen. Where we have to start is the outline. And if you open up the field section, no big surprise, here are the fields that we added into our, that we got back from our query, and then we put into this, the system. So let's go and take all 4 of these fields. So I just did the typical click on one, shift, click on the bottom. And we're going to drag them onto the screen. And I'm going to specifically drop them on the detail band. I am asked often what kind of report designer Studio is. This is called a banded report designer, okay, because of the different bands. And I'm going to drop these fields onto the detail band. And watch what happens. They're all laid out nicely, and labels are created on the fly in the column header for us. So if we just stop there, we're not gonna, but if we just stop there and we click on preview, we've just built the report. We're not gonna win any awards with it, okay? But, right, did we build a report? Yes, we have a functional report. I could take this report and I could view it in multiple formats. I could open it up as a PDF. I could publish this on Jasper Report Server. This is a fully functional report, but we're going to make this look better. So let's go back to the design. The first thing we need to do is clean this up a bit. We're not going to use all the bands. I don't need the page header. I'm going to hold down my command. I'm on a Mac, command key. I don't need my column footer or my summary band. Okay, and I'm going to delete these, and it pulls it off the screen. And let's click preview again. Now what's going on? Why do we have all these spaces over here? Let's make that look better. What happens is, every time we have a row, we cycle through the band. Okay, the title happens once. Okay, but this column header, this detail, and this footer happens each time a row goes by. So let's make this look better. Let's go and clean up where our data rows are up, next to our header. I can drag this up and move it to a better place, or I can just simply double click on the line and it instantly moves it up nicely. Same thing for the bottom. I could drag this up, but let's just double click and it tightens that up real nice. We'll move the footer up a little bit. And of course, preview. Okay, now we're getting a little bit better over here, right? Now we're getting a little bit better. Shoot back over to our design. And now we get to have some fun. Not that we weren't having any fun at all so far, but now we get to have, a little bit of art over here. We can start designing, and let's do exactly that. We're going to take all of, again, I'm clicking on my command key, all of my labels, and I want them to be. Let me get my zoom thing over here. I want them to be bold, so they're now bold. I am a fan of the Arial font, so I'm going to choose Arial, and we're going to kick them up to, how does 12 look? 12 looks pretty cool, but we should center them in that section using all the formatting tools right there on the toolbar, very easy to get to. That looks pretty snazzy. I don't like this label because it took the name of the column from the database, the field from the database. So let's just double click on that and get rid of the characters that we don't want. Okay, that looks cool. And let's, of course, clean up the fields. So we'll do the same thing here. We're going to click on each one. And the same thing. Let's center them horizontally and then center them vertically. So now we've got a nicer looking report. Again, quick little preview. Things are looking pretty good. All right. Now, something to note. The more complexity you add to this report, the more complexity there is in the report, the more it has to process. Think of things like word wrap. If you've got a lot of data that's going to come back from a lot of characters, a lot of text in a field, we can do word wrapping. All right, well, that takes some processing to understand, how we're going to do that. We're going to put a style, a conditional style in here. But the more you add into the report, the more sub-reports you put into the report, the more you put into these reports, that will have to process more. And that could make the report possibly run a little bit slower. So when you're building these reports, you need to think about that, okay? It's not just going to be a CSV file where you're just going to put some text on the screen. These reports could get complex, and you want to take that into account when you're building them. Now, the example report that we had the page numbers. This is pretty cool. Out of the box, we give you some little objects you can drag and drop on the screen. I'm over here at the page number, total pages section. I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to pick the one that says page X of Y. Now watch what happens when I drag and drop this onto the screen. I'm actually given a couple text boxes with some text inside of them. Let's double click on one. I'll show you what I mean, because this really is just a text field. Okay. I can move that zoom box. It's a text field with an expression in it. And this expression is going to say page, space, and then the page number that we're on. Now check this out. If I double click on the other one, this one's going to say of, page 1 of, and then notice it's the same variable, page number. But how does that work? It's the same thing, page number, but this one's going to show, if we take a look at this, if they're the same ones, how is this one showing 1 and how is this one showing 238? It's the same variable. But if we take a look at how they work, drag that zoom up again. If we take a look at how these work, okay, this one, this text field, okay, is going to, let's go and open this up and take a look at it. Evaluate now. See the evaluation time now? Hopefully you can see where my cursor is. This is going to run and be evaluated now. The moment I'm running it, when I'm looking at the report. This one is going to be evaluated, not now, I'm sorry, text field. This one is going to be evaluated once the report is finished. Okay? So something you'll need to understand, a concept you'll have to learn more about when you're using the tool, is the state when the report is being run. Okay? So that's the same variable. Okay? It's the same little object, the same thing, but at some point in time, it's showing you the current page, the now page, and at another point in time, it's showing you the very, very last page. So that's also important to understand. When you run a report, we run and pull back all the data of that report at one time. Okay, we bring it all back. So if there's 5,000, 10,000 pages in that report, we're going to build a report with all those pages in it. All right, we're not doing a lazy loading thing. You're not bringing them back little by little. We need to have them all in there. And one of the reasons why we need to have everything in that print object, that's technically what it's called, this print object, is because if we don't have everything in the print object, we can't do things like that. I can't evaluate things. I can't do calculations unless I have all the data in the print object to do that. So the same variable, but when it's run, you'll see that it's on page 1, 2, 3, but there are 238 pages because this one is being run when the report is fully populated in the print object, and this one is showing me the page that I'm on now. Okay. So we do have a few more things we need to add into this report. We have to add in the title, the little shark, and we have to add in our parameter to filter things down. So let's go and knock that out over here with the title. So first thing we'll do is we'll bring in the title field. We'll drag and drop that onto the screen. Okay, and we can go and build this out and put our text in. But something else that's pretty cool, rather than doing that, is you can copy and paste things from one report and bring them into another. So this way, as you're building things, it might be easier for you to have a template report built over there, or have one that has something common across the two, and share them between the two reports. Okay, so this text field has some text in it, as you can see. It has border, and it has a bit of a background. Now, we're also missing our shark. So let's take our shark. There's a JPEG in my project. You can just drag and drop pictures and images into your project. So I'm going to take this one now that's here. I'm going to drag and drop it onto the screen. And I'll now make my shark look kind of cool. And boom, let's preview this report. And here we are. Is it really safe to swim in the water? Here is a list of people that should have looked before they jumped in. Bum, bum, bum. Okay. And there we go. So let's keep going over here. We have to add a style into this report. So let's do that real quick. All right, because we want Fatal to change its background color. So we're going to right-click on our styles, and we're going to create a new style. And this style is going to be conditional. This style is only going to be in effect when this Fatal field is a Y. So let's make this happen. First of all, what do we want it to do? Well, we want the background to change its color, right? Make it a little bit transparent over here. So we want the background to be applied to whatever we use it on. And we need it to be a condition. So let's double click on this. And the condition is going to be when the Fatal field is equal to Y. Now, again, questions that come up sometimes. Wow, it's all written in Java. Do I have to know a lot about Java to write a report? Is this a Java thing? No, it's not. But there are times where you're going to have to be using, this is Java, okay? You need to have an understanding of some of these different expressions, which are all available for you, very easy to use. So this is about the amount of coding that you're going to have to know how to use for most of your reports. So don't be intimidated when you hear that. It's not hard at all. It's very easy, and we have it all laid out for you anyway. Okay, so we've made our style, and we want to use the style. So now if we go over here to the Fatal field, and we apply that style to that field, okay, and we don't make the background transparent, I could use this style on anything I want, but I'm going to use it on this field. And if I click on preview now, notice how everything is in red if Fatal equals Y. Now I can go and shrink this down and make it look a little bit better, but we're getting kind of tight on time over here, so I want to move this through a little bit faster. But I can use this anywhere. This may be Y, but I want the country to be red. You see, I can use this anywhere I want. Sometimes you may want to use a field for a condition that's not even on your screen. So flexible, so cool. You can do whatever you want with that. So let's finish this up. We need to add in our parameter. Okay, so let's take a look at that real quick. In this report, our example report, okay, when we run this one, oops, let's double click this back again. We run this report, okay, this allows us to pick the gender. And it's a parameter called paragender, P-A-R-A, gender, okay? And if we take a look at that parameter, It is a Java util collection. Like I mentioned before, you're not programming at all. You're just using little bits and pieces here and there. So let's go and take that class type, because I know I'm going to use it, and let's go and build that parameter in my actual report. So we're going to right-click on our parameter. We're going to create a parameter. We're going to rename it PARA gender. That sounds good. Go back over here. Click on it by accident. Sorry about that. And the class is going to be our util, okay, our collection. We want it to prompt, okay, so that means we want it to be required to run the report from the beginning, but we also want it to have a default value to work all the time. So if we go back and take a look at our example one, our default value actually has a collection in it, an array here. So this is basically giving us a default, that's all. It's just simply saying we wanted to make sure that there's something in here from the beginning so that everything works fine. So let's go back over here and take a look at our parameter and just simply add in our default value. That's all. This is just good practice. You don't have to have the default value, but if you don't, then things might not work when you're using it because there's nothing there in it from the start. Now, obviously, if we click on preview, it's going to prompt us, but if I make it just for males, it's not going to affect anything yet because we're not using it in our query. And that's the pretty much final part that we have to add in. Because if we take a look at our query that's pulling back the data, the query is not being altered at all by that parameter. So we go back over here to my queries that I built ahead of time, just because I want to make sure everything goes smooth for you. And take a look at the difference in this one. When I paste it in, now I'm using a little bit of Jaspersoft Studio syntax over here. And I'm saying that I want to take a look at a data field and I want to pass a parameter into the mix and use an in function, part of an in call from my SQL statement. This is all documented very clearly in the Jaspersoft Studio manual. You'll learn all about parameters, but with this, we now can make our query more flexible. So if we click on OK, and now we do our preview. Okay, and I just bring back the males. I've only got males. And if I bring back only females, I've only got my females. And of course, one more time, let's bring everybody back. And we've got everybody again. So there's our report. We built it. We built a pretty cool report. I'm going to finish this up with pretty much just one more thing. Let's talk about deploying this report. Deploying is going to vary based on your need. You could be deploying this by taking the JR XML file and using it in a Java-based project where you're using our open source free library. Okay, so you're simply taking this and using it in your own project, and it then gets compiled and is produced, and that's the whole programming thing. And you can go and do that, okay? Or you may choose to connect to a Jasper report server and publish these reports by clicking on the little publish icon right here, publish report to Jasper report server, and push this report up to a Jasper report server. So for any of you that are using Jaspersoft up on Amazon, AWS, right? You'd be connecting to your AWS instance of Jaspersoft up there in Amazon land, and you'd be pushing and pulling reports back and forth, publishing them, maybe tweaking them back and forth up there, and that allows you to also create multiple Jasper report servers. So I can push to dev, I can push to production, I can push to a local Jasper report server and publish these reports in different locations. And that is our Shark Attack report demo. And I think at this point, we're going to answer some questions. Hopefully, we've got enough time to help you if you have any questions. So let's go and do that now, Shane.
Awesome. Thank you, Gene. And I'm just going to take you through everyone through one slide, which I promised earlier in today's presentation, and that is kind of a look at the various commercial and community editions side by side. The only thing that's not included in here is Jaspersoft Studio because it's relatively straightforward. You do get interactivity with charts in Jaspersoft Studio, but if you need some more advanced charts or maps that you're trying to include within your report, then you need the commercial version of Jaspersoft Studio. And also if you wanted things like support, which is pretty common among many of our customers, you'd have to go to the commercial offering, but the community offering is very powerful in its own right. And then just going through each of these very quickly, and again, we're going to send out the slides so you can go and look through in more detail. Some reasons to choose the community library. If you just need to provide users with static reports from an operational database, this is going to suffice your needs for that. The reason that you go to the commercial library is you need to provide users with some more interactive reports and charts from an operational database. For the community server, that's largely for if you have a small internal team that you want to deliver reports to. You need interactive reports, but you don't need dashboards, which is included in the commercial server. Or you want to organize reports in a centralized portal that your users can access on their own is a use case for the community edition of the server product. And then finally, reasons to choose the commercial server. You want to give your users highly interactive and intuitive data experiences within your web app. And part of that is thanks to our award-winning JavaScript API, which we don't have time for today, and it's a separate topic altogether. If you're embedding analytics into your SaaS application or some other publicly distributed product or service, you generally are going to be going through the commercial edition, and you can look into the open source licensing because there are instances where you can get away with that in the community edition. And if you want to do any self-service, Gina mentioned earlier, within Jasper Report Server, we have an ad hoc environment that allows you to provide business users the ability to build reports on their own. That's something that's available in our commercial server product. So with that, we're going to move into Q&A, and 30 seconds I'm going to go through the slide while everyone's plugging in their questions. I see we already have a couple. If you're interested in just trying the free software, the community editions of Jaspersoft, you can follow this link on our community sites, community.jaspersoft.com/download. If you're interested in trying the commercial software, we have a free trial for 60 days. You can go to jaspersoft.com/download and get some of those commercial features. I mentioned data as a feature, that concept earlier, that's available on jaspersoft.com under a resources section. And then lastly, if we aren't able to get to your questions today, there's an email alias. I'm on it, Gene's on it, and all of the solutions consultants as part of Jaspersoft are part of that. So nam-jaspersoftdemo@tipco.com. Please follow that and send any questions you have our way. And then lastly, I can't talk about much today, but we have a very exciting announcement that's happening hopefully later this month around this subject. So stay tuned for that. You should be receiving an email. I know we're at the top of the hour, but I think we can stick around for a few minutes and see if there are any questions, how many of these we can get to. And let me just pull up and see what we currently have. And Gene, it looks like the first question is, someone is interested to know, it looks like they no longer have the default screen that you're showing in terms of how everything was laid out within Studio, and they want to know how they can revert back to that default view.
Yep. Inside of your system, you can go and reset your perspective. So just go up to Window. I know you can't see my screen right now, but if you're just going to go to Window and then go scroll down to Reset Perspective. Something you can do inside of Eclipse, this is not a Studio thing, it's just an Eclipse thing, is create different perspectives and there are different layouts of different panels to do different things. In Java, you could have a debug one, but anyway, they're set. So you just go to Window, Reset Perspective, and whatever perspective you're in will go back to whatever it was when it was first set up, and you'll be looking pretty again.
Great. And it looks like we just have one more question at the moment, which is probably good because we're over. Maybe you can add some color to this.
Sure.
I mentioned earlier, can you build chart-based dashboards in the professional version of Studio?
You can actually build chart-based dashboards in any version of Studio, okay? Because really, a chart-based dashboard is simply just taking a bunch of charts and laying them out nicely on a report. Earlier releases of Jasper Report Server, our dashboards really kind of existed of just a report with a lot of charts on it. So it's not a professional thing, it's just a design thing. Now, I would argue that that might not be the best way to create a dashboard because it's not very dynamic. I can't have different charts work individually, you know, because I can't click on one and make something else happen. You've got one static report. So if I want to refresh that report or click on something and make a change, I have to regenerate that entire report. So it's not a matter of can you can. It's more of a matter of is it the right method to make that dashboard? Okay, so hopefully that helps a little bit, but totally doable. You can do it with the, the free edition, but then again, you have to figure out where you're going to host it. That's a whole other part of your question over there. But to design something, go for it. You can do it. I just would argue if that's the best way to approach that use case.
Great. And we're going to wrap up here. There are just two last things. One was that there was a question Susie had if this is going to be available or rebroadcasted. And again, yeah, this is going to be sent out within the next 3 days. You're going to have access both to the recording, so you can go through at your own pace, and all the slides that we went through today are going to be available. And I'll also mention, I forgot to include it in here, Giulio Toffoli is the creator, the architect of Jaspersoft Studio. He's going to be doing a webinar in the beginning of August on advanced tips and tricks in Jaspersoft Studio. So you are going to receive an email that will invite you to register for that webinar. So hopefully by that time you've had a chance to play around with some of these basic concepts, and at that point you might be ready for some of the more advanced concepts and taking your reporting with Jaspersoft to the next level. But with that, I just want to say, give a big thank you to Gene for driving the demo portion and handling the Q&A. And thank you to everyone attending. Hope you got some value out of this, and that you have enough in your arsenal now to go out and build your first report. And with that, I'll wish you a great rest of your Tuesday and a great rest of your week. Thank you, everyone, for attending.